All right, welcome into the Breneman and Butt Show. When you're ranked top 4 in the country and when my alma mater is caught slipping like they were last weekend, we adjust. It is now the Breneman and Butt Show. Why don't we just start there? I'll give you the floor. The Nittany Lions inside the top 4. Whoa!
Jake, I want to start with one thing right now, okay?
Please.
I'm going to pull up my text messages. I got a text this morning, 9:41 Eastern time to be exact, and it said, Breneman, I hate to say this, but Penn State is not the 4th best team in the country.
Yeah.
Jake, I don't know what you've been watching. I don't know what you've been watching.
I watched last week versus UCLA. 100.
Penn State is not the 4th. Penn State is not the 4th best team in the country because why? Their first team defense allowed 10 points in 2 weeks against UCLA and Illinois. Michigan wasn't boat racing teams on offense last year. Certainly not. This Penn State offense reminds me a lot of Michigan's last year, actually. Then you get the rest of the teams in the top that were in the top 4 in the country. Alabama loses. Miami barely snuck out wins. So what am I missing? Penn State should absolutely be ranked in the top 4, given what everyone else has done. And
oh yeah, no.
And that offense is way more explosive than it was last year. So I agree, it hasn't always been pretty, but Penn State's won by big margins in these games.
Listen, they should be. I'm with you. They should be ranked in the top 4. I think the rankings are correct, but I question if they're a better team than Alabama right now or a better team than Tennessee, for example. I mean, Alabama, I get they lost, but man, have they looked impressive. The win versus Georgia is the most impressive win of the season, most likely. Talk about explosion. Tennessee has looked even more explosive. Part of the reason I say this is, if you're the 4th best team in the country and you're playing UCLA at home, a team that we watched Indiana go on the road and dominate, I want to see a level of maturity that even though Singleton's out, Penn State should be able to say, we're going to impose our will on anyone and run for 100 yards. It was 85 yards on the day, under 3 yards per carry. That part to me, Bren, like I can't just let that slide and say that's not the 4th best team in the country if they play like that.
I'm with you. And the run game was concerning against UCLA, but the bright side, and I'm looking at the glass half full here, is that Penn State for earlier this season, for last year, for really the entire tenure under James Franklin, the last 5 years, their issue has been that they don't have a pass game and their offense hasn't been explosive enough. So I almost was encouraged to see the run game struggle because I know the run game's going to come back. Kaytron Allen, Nick Singleton when he's healthy. Nick Singleton didn't play in this game, arguably the best top 3 running back in the Big Ten. That run game's going to come back. But the fact that when the run game didn't work, Penn State found a way to be explosive on offense. Drew Aller threw for 230-some yards, threw for a touchdown. Some of their receivers stepped up. How about Liam Clifford? I mean, I mean, the Clifford family's been around forever in the Big Ten. Liam Clifford had 100 yards. Harrison Wallace made some big plays. So the fact that they were able to throw the football when the run game didn't work, I was kind of encouraged by, because it tells me that Penn State's got multiple ways to win football games.
Look, I don't want to discredit Penn State. I don't want this to be interpreted as me saying, wow, Penn State sucks. They're a really good team.
I don't know. That's how I interpreted it.
Well, I can't control that, brother. So that's on you, not me. But look, they've been impressive, and everything you said, like clearly, when we look back on this, Kodal Nicky could be the key hire of the entire conference. Like he could be. But Adam, like I'm waiting for complete and utter dominance. I'm not, but here's the thing. This weekend's going to reveal a lot. I think the collective record, there's only been one win by a team that's traveled across the country, and that was Indiana over UCLA. Every other team has lost in all conferences. Yeah. So, for Penn State, the maturity, I know they had some airport trouble, so they're going to have to bus a few hours and all this stuff. But this is going to be a revealing game for Penn State because, hey, you need to run the ball. USC can't stop the run. Defensively, the antidote to getting after is to get after Miller Moss. And I love I actually think Zane Durant has been their best defensive lineman, just
agreed
in terms of playing the position. And then the secondary, actually, I have more questions about the secondary than I do the front. So this is going to be a big weekend. Minnesota has one of the, in terms of ratings, better pass defenses in all of college football. And they came up big last weekend versus USC. So what are you thinking about that side of the ball? What are you thinking about the game in general, really?
We're going to find out a lot about Penn State and USC in this game. We're gonna
Yeah.
see which program is for real. And I'll start with USC. Disappointing loss to Minnesota, a game against Michigan that I still think they could have won easily, but ended up losing. So you're gonna find out a lot about Lincoln Riley and his program. I mean, time to show some grit, and things haven't been easy. It hasn't always gone well, but you find in this 12-team playoff era, and with all these teams beating up on each other, you find a way to beat the number 4 team in the country, and you're right back in there, and everyone's happy again, right? So USC has a huge opportunity. For Penn State, for all the good things I just said about Penn State, they don't have that elite win yet, and they've beat Illinois, who's a good team, but Penn State should beat Illinois every day of the week. They beat UCLA, West Virginia week 1, who's been a decent team, but West Virginia hasn't been what everyone thought they were going to be. So they don't have that great win. And then add in, Jake, what you just said, the travel across the country, the first cross-country road trip in the new Big Ten for Penn State. We're going to find out. If Penn State goes on the road and beats USC by 14 points, then Penn State absolutely is a top 4 team in the country and is for real. And they will have to score points to be able to do that. So if Penn State can do that, I mean, they're legit. Now, if Penn State goes across the country and loses this game,
Yeah.
it ain't going to be good. Let's just say that. It ain't going to be good, especially after USC coming off of the Minnesota loss. I almost think, Jake, like that. I know that people are saying, well, USC's out of the top 25. Minnesota loss kind of hurts the game. It makes it even more interesting to me because it's become really like a must-win game for Penn State. And for USC, it's one that could change your whole season when things aren't going well.
It's a must-win game for both. I mean, Lincoln Riley, like this is like an inflection point in the season for them. And that team has to figure out who they want to be. I mean, Lincoln Riley, when that hire was made and he signed the contract and you see the numbers, $10 million a year, expectation, like that comes with expectation. Like that comes with a standard, and that's okay. That's football. But they have to figure out who they want to be. And I'll tell you what, man, I'll give Drew Aller a ton of credit because I think he has clearly taken strides every single year. I think he's about to break the record for lowest percentage of interceptions right now. He's at like 0.5% of his throws have resulted in an interception. Unbelievable stat. So that's going to be a big one. Speaking of USC, get upset by Minnesota. And I think we do have to take a second here to look back and just talk about, to me, I look at that and PJ Fleck has taken a lot of heat, right? He's taken a lot of heat over the years. So if that's going to be the truth, then we give him some credit too. That was a program win, maybe the biggest win of his entire coaching tenure at Minnesota. And they did it their way. They made USC play their game. And PJ, he's traditionally conservative. The decision to go for a touchdown on 4th and goal, that's a freaking ballsy decision, and it paid off. He earned the right to celebrate. It was a beautiful win.
Yeah, getting the quarterback sneak to win that game is just epitomizes PJ Fleck and Minnesota and the row the boat culture at Minnesota. A huge win for PJ. And what I think PJ does as good of a job of as anyone. You can make the argument that he hasn't built Minnesota to that kind of top tier in the Big Ten, which that's fair. But Minnesota is also a tough place to win at. But what he's done is that every single game Minnesota plays, they have a chance to win that game. There's no one who looks at Minnesota and circles a guaranteed W on their schedule. And clearly that's the case when they just beat USC. So they did a great job of getting after Miller Moss, forcing 2 interceptions, getting USC in 3rd down and medium to long. More turnovers happen on 3rd and long than any other down and distance in football. So getting Miller Moss off balance and getting some pressure on him was key. And then to be able to kind of hold that USC offense that's been dynamic throughout the season to 17 points is a huge stand for PJ Fleck in Minnesota. So we got to give credit to PJ, got to row the darn boat, man. And you got to love some Big Ten football. But Jake, we got a big one coming up this weekend as well with Oregon, Ohio State. I think we're going to find out a lot about these two programs, similar to Penn State, USC, and just both these teams have played well, but haven't had a super tough test. And
Mhm.
I think about Oregon specifically. Dylan Gabriel, supposed to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I think he is. I mean, he's won so many games, but has also made some mistakes. 2 interceptions in the red zone against Michigan State. That Oregon offense didn't look great in the first half. So either of these teams have a chance now to prove that that they're the best roster in the country and can earn that number 2 and number 3 ranking.
I'm interested in the emotional side of the coaching matchup here because both of these coaches it's like they're looking in a mirror. The storylines have been the same. Both programs have effectively unlimited resources. Both programs have won a ton of games. These are two of the most winningest coaches in all of college football. And yet the Achilles heel, both have failed to beat their rivals. Neither have won a national title. So there can only be one winner and one loser this weekend, and it's going to make for a fun matchup. And I'm really interested. I look at Ryan Day and the decision to give up play calling duty to bring in Chip Kelly. He did that for this game where he can be aware of the situations, where he can be aware of the broader picture, when he could be in communication with his defensive staff and special teams. He did that for this game. And, Adam, what I've seen out of Ohio State is it's not just Ryan Day that's fallen short. Guys like JT Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer, Tyleik Williams, Travion Henderson, Emeka Egbuka, you can go down the list. Those guys have experienced the same pain of deep loss as their head coach has. So what I see is a team that's in complete alignment when you turn on the tape. They're playing like they have something to prove. They're playing with a chip on their shoulder. Obviously, this weekend is going to be the biggest test to find out what's real and what isn't. And for Oregon, man, when we started off the season, we were talking about what's going on with the trenches. What's going on with the offensive line? They did a great job of opening lanes for the running back James last weekend. Michigan State's trying to bring pressure and simulated pressure. Offensive line kept Dylan Gabriel clean. The defensive line has some studs. So I think this game is going to be as sexy as some of these playmakers are outside. Tez Johnson, Evan Stewart, Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka. This game is won and lost in the trenches. Simply, I think this is going to be one of the most physical games of the season too.
Without a doubt. And both these teams with Will Howard and Dylan Gabriel, those two quarterbacks aren't guys who are going to completely take over the game and create with their legs and get off rhythm and make off-platform throws. That's not what those guys do. Those guys are part of a formula, and for both these teams, the entire formula has to be put together. You can't miss one of the ingredients, and if you miss one of the ingredients, it won't work. So for Oregon, that was the issue. Their offensive line was struggling early in the season. Now they've made some changes. They moved the center. They changed their starting center, and now their offensive line is playing well, and that allows you put all the ingredients together. It's really good, and that's when Dylan Gabriel can play his best. Same with Ohio State. Will Howard is not a guy that you want to ask to go win the game for you. I think he can, but he's not a guy you want to take over the game. Get the ball to your playmakers, use those two running backs, and kind of play Ohio State football. So it's kind of good on good, strength on strength. Both have the same style on offense of how they play the game. I'll say this, Jake. Ohio State, Oregon is huge for the Big Ten Conference on a national stage. Biggest game of the year so far. Debatable with Alabama and Georgia, but this is the biggest game of the year in my opinion. And it's going to be fun to watch this game be a Big Ten football game against two of the best teams, really probably the two best teams in the conference. I think if Oregon wins this game, it'll be close. And if Ohio State were to win, I think what we for the conference, what you don't want is an Ohio State winning by 21 points. You kind of want a close game and keep these two teams at the top of the conference where, these are still at the end of this game, you watch and say, these are two of the best teams in college football that just played a great football game.
Yeah, I love these games to get a chance to see how the young players respond to the spotlight. And, for Ohio State, how good, I go back to it. Like JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer could have left for the NFL. Emeka Egbuka 2 years ago, we were talking about him as a first-round pick, and he was a little bit injured last year. Travion Henderson decides to come back, and those guys have been playing with a passion that's extremely easy to see when you turn on the film. And you need that. You need unity and alignment to win on the road. And you need to be able to run the football. And, can Oregon stop the run? Can they, just like we said, the plan for Minnesota to slow down USC's
Yeah.
offense. Can Oregon stop the run? Can they force Will Howard to beat them consistently for 4 quarters? And then for Ohio State, it's the same thing with Dylan Gabriel. You know, he's not built like Drew Aller. He's so talented,
Yeah.
man, and he's accurate, pinpoint, but he's not really built to take a beating. That's what
Yeah.
Ohio
Great
State's
point.
defense and defensive line is going to try to do. So here's one little fun matchup too. Last week, Michigan State's linebacker was Cal Halliday, right? Linebacker. And what Oregon did formationally and with motions is they got like Evan Stewart and Tez Johnson, their receivers, matched up on Cal Halliday. And look, it's
Yeah.
not a knock on Cal. No linebacker is covering those guys,
Yeah.
except Ohio State's linebacker, who played his best game of the season last week, Sonny Styles. He's a converted
Yeah.
safety. He's an athlete.
Yeah.
He gives Jim Knowles a lot of fluidity and flexibility in terms of play calling. So that the chess match between these coordinators is going to be really, really fun to watch. Do you have any key to the game? Like what's one or two
Yeah.
things
I was
think could
I was
decide
going
it?
to say, yeah, the one player I want to watch in this game that will make an impact, and I've gotten to know some of these Oregon coaches pretty well. Will Stein, their offensive coordinator, will be a head coach very soon in college football. Loves in these big games and critical moments, he loves the tight end. And I know you and I love that. Man, Terrence Ferguson, Oregon's tight end, is going to be a guy to watch in third down, big moments, because they have so much skill on the outside. You just mentioned the receivers. And with some of these linebacker matchups, you mentioned Styles. I mean, if Terrence Ferguson if they can find a way to scheme him open, he had 2 huge catches last week in the Michigan State game. If they can find a way to scheme him open, I think Ferguson is an impact player in this game. And with how good Ohio State is on the back end in the secondary, and with how well they're going to get after Dylan Gabriel, there's going to be a bunch of opportunities for Ferguson underneath to make catches and make big plays after the catch. So I think Terrence Ferguson needs to play his best football of his career. And then for Ohio State, it's the run game. Get the 2 running backs involved. Henderson and Junkins, those 2 guys have to be great. And listen, if Oregon stops the run early in this game, I want to see Ohio State stick with it. Like, don't abandon the run game. I don't think Chip Kelly will, but this offense for Ohio State is best when they're running the football well, and when Will Howard can use play action, and when that offense is humming is when those running backs are playing really well. So I think that's the other key, is that kind of run game for Ohio State. Can Ohio State find a way to control the game around the football?
Yeah, I love it with Terrence Ferguson. I think tight end success is really dependent on the ability to run the football, because the guys that are matched up with the tight ends, the linebackers and the safeties, if you're running the ball well, their first thought has to be to count for the run. And then you got a guy like an athlete like Terrence Ferguson. If you're if that's your second thought as a defender, you're in real trouble. So I want to put a bow on this episode, and there's only one way to do it, man. The Hoosiers were the first Big Ten team to go 6-0, the first one to become bowl eligible. They're freaking rolling. They got stopped on their first 2 drives of the game. They didn't blink. Scored on the next 7, including 5 touchdowns. Curtis Rourke, my goodness, yes. I mean, if you just look at it with no previous bias, best quarterback in the Big Ten right now. He's playing the best of any quarterback in the Big Ten right now. What's your thoughts on the Hoosiers?
No, listen, don't get me started on previous bias right now with Indiana, because Indiana was 18th in the AP poll. We are talking about a 6-0 Big Ten football team that has dominated every opponent they've had this season. So Indiana, if you are undefeated on playing on October 12th, in a power conference, you should be a top 15 team in the country. And all this is because of the biases of the AP poll early in the season, as Indiana's unranked, and now they're kind of climbing their way back in there. Get rid of the AP poll. At least don't do it till after 3 weeks, because Indiana is one of the top 15 teams in college football. And listen, man, there is just some new energy around that Indiana program. And Curtis Rourke is playing as well as any quarterback in the Big Ten, maybe as well as any quarterback in college football right now. I mean, he is playing that well. He is that consistent. He's been that efficient throwing the football. They got to find a way to keep it going. It seems like every week I keep thinking, oh, one of these weeks Indiana is going to really slow down. For the last 3 weeks, I thought that hasn't happened yet. So hats off to Kirk Cinetti. He called his shot, and it's happening.
Yeah, man. And He's spreading the ball around too. Like they're
So many
multiple
playmakers.
offensively,
Yeah.
right? Like they have two primary backs, but really they have three or four that have gotten carries. They got 5 freaking receivers. Elijah Surratt is wide receiver 1, but even their tight end, Zach Horton, gets involved. How about this, Adam? 37 trips to the red zone. That's more than Ohio State and Michigan combined, okay? That's more trips than Ohio State and Michigan combined. Wow. They have 34 scores, including 30 touchdowns. You think about red zone scoring, you have to be multiple, you have to be creative, and you have to execute. They have been phenomenal. You look at the back half of that schedule, man. They got Washington, Ohio State, Michigan. They're winning at least one of those, and I think they could win 2, and they might even be favored in a few of those. Probably not Ohio State. They very well could be favored with the way Michigan's playing. So Big Ten, man, so fun, so much drama. Looking forward to watching your guys this weekend, watching Oregon, Ohio State, maybe the game of the year. So pumped up.
Yeah, we were saying that last weekend was a bad slate of games, and it gave us some of the best we've seen in a long time.
It works.
So this one's going to be crazy too. I'm excited, man.
It's just like when you're going through practice as a tight end. It's the weeks that you thought you were going to ball out. You just never get any targets.
Exactly.
The weeks where you're like down on yourself, that's when you get all the targets.
What game you got this weekend?
I got Wisconsin Rutgers. So
let's go. Love
Rutgers need a bounce. Yeah, we've both been high on Rutgers. Need a bounce back. That was a tough one.
I know.
And then Wisconsin, maybe they found something last week. Best offensive performance of the season. Man. They've been waiting for that.
Rutgers should have won that game. I mean, they had everything there. Dropped the touchdown early in the game. Tough, man, tough. I got undefeated Army this weekend, man. Undefeated Army sitting at longest win streak in the country.
Wow,
man, Army could be in the playoff.
So they're saying they'll play in the conference championship before they play Navy, right? Like there's some wild craziness with the schedule.
When they join the AAC, the Army Navy game is they play after the conference championship, and it's not a conference game technically. So if they both win, if they're the top 2 teams in the AAC, they'll play in the conference championship, then play each other the next week in the Army Navy game.
More is more, baby. We'll be tuned in regardless.
America.
Yep. And we'll be breaking it down with you guys regardless. This is the Breneman and Butt Show. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.